Great. Thank you so much for joining. So I'm so excited to introduce our expert today, Elizabeth Long, immigration expert, barrister, solicitor, and partner with LM Law Group. Elizabeth has been hosting all of our sessions on immigration for a number of years. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here with us today as an expert in Canada on immigration. I'm so excited to give you the floor. Welcome, Elizabeth, and thank you so much for talking about permanent residence and spousal sponsorships today. The floor is over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Sisha. It's great to be back here again today with you guys. So today, backed by popular demand, we are going to talk about spousal sponsorships. These days, with the economic permanent residence applications, it can get quite tough for many people to get through to permanent residence. And so what better way if you have a partner who is there to help you along the journey and to be able to sponsor you. So we're going to talk about how this whole system works. First of all, what does sponsorship actually mean? Okay, you hear a lot of people, oh, my company is going to sponsor me. Oh, I want to be sponsored. What exactly does sponsorship mean? Well, in Canada, it's only family members who can sponsor you. A company cannot sponsor you. A company might support you with your application, but they can't sponsor you. Sponsorship is a very, very defined meaning in immigration. Okay. And really, in sponsorships, it's all about family sponsorships in Canada. That is, a Canadian citizen or permanent resident can sponsor certain people in their family. You can't sponsor everybody, but you can sponsor certain people, okay? And today we're going to talk about spousal sponsorships, okay? So during the sponsorship period, the person who is sponsoring, the sponsor, okay, is financially responsible for the people that they are sponsoring. And so for spousal sponsorship, that period is 3 years, okay? And what that means is even if the relationship breaks down, even if the sponsor doesn't want the sponsoree to go on social assistance, if that happens, the government will come after the sponsor. Okay? And so what the government wants the sponsor to do is be financially responsible for the person that they are sponsoring for a period of time. And in spousal sponsorships, it's 3 years. What is not sponsorship? A company, like I said, doesn't sponsor anyone. Okay, a company, a company sponsorship is very much a US term, and it gets brought over to Canada, and people say, oh, I want my company to sponsor me. And the company gets all, what does that mean? I'm going to sponsor. That's a lot of responsibility. A company never sponsors someone in Canada. A company might support an application, but they don't sponsor. You're also not a sponsor if you're applying for yourself and other people are accompanying you in your applications. If you are a principal applicant and your partner is an accompanying spouse or your kids are accompanying you, you are not a sponsor of them. What does that mean? That means after you get permanent residence, if you're applying together with your family and your family later on goes on social assistance, will the government come after you? No, they will not, because you are not a sponsor. Okay, a sponsor can only be a Canadian or permanent resident who is sponsoring someone else to become a permanent resident. All right, so let's talk about who your spouse is. There are 3 kinds of relationships that qualify for spousal sponsorship. The first one, someone you're married to, of course. Okay. The second one is the common law spouse, and this is the one that tends to be get people sometimes in a little bit of trouble because sometimes people don't even realize that they fall under a common law relationship. Who really counts the 1 year anniversary, not of the day you met or of the day you married, but of the day you started living together? You know who counts? The government does. Okay? So if you are in the situation where you don't have permanent residence or Canadian citizenship, you better count that day as well. Okay? Because on that day that you have cohabited for 1 year, you become family in the eyes of the immigration department. Okay? And so if you have lived together continuously in a marriage-like situation, live together continuously in a marriage-like situation for 1 year, you are common law. And it's important, even if you're not sponsoring someone, but if you are answering, if you yourself are applying for any sort of application, study permit, work permit, permanent residence, express entry, whatever, they will always ask you, tick, what is your marital situation? What is your status, family status? And if you are in a common law relationship, guess what? You tick common law, not single. If you tick single, that's misrepresentation. And that could really come back and harm you in the future, even if you get permanent residence. Okay? There's a third kind of relationship in which you can apply for spousal sponsorship, and those are conjugal relationships. Those are marriage-like situations where the couple doesn't reside together. And normally, originally, those were for situations like LGBT situations where in countries they weren't allowed to live together, but they were in a marriage-like situations. Um, it's used very, very rarely in spousal sponsorships, okay? Normally, we are looking at the first two, someone you're married to or someone who you're common law relationship. Remember when I said you have to declare your family, right? Especially common law, right? Marriage, yeah, okay. Everybody knows, okay, I'm married. You better take your married. But common law, sometimes you're like, oh, I don't really feel that we're that level of family. Well, you are that level of family if you've lived together, and if not, it can be found to be misrepresentation. Misrepresentation carries with it a ban from Canada of 5 years. B, it can also negate your previous application. Believe it or not, if you had applied for example, for express entry, and you said you're single, but actually you're common law, if later on they find out, it is possible, not all the time it happens, but it is possible for them to say that you misrepresented in your original application. And it is possible for you to lose your permanent resident status. Okay. Also, there is a bar from sponsoring your family members that you did not declare before when you applied for permanent residence. So if you had applied for yourself for permanent residence, you didn't declare your common law spouse before, and then later on you want to sponsor that person, there is a bar from sponsoring. Now, there is a public policy where you may be able to overcome that right now, but originally the law barred you from sponsoring your family members. Okay, so make sure that you are very clear on your first year anniversary if you're common law, and make sure that you properly declare your marital status on your applications. So, what are the indices of a marriage-like relationship? It's not enough, for example, to just show that you have a marriage certificate. Technically, you could just get married and get a marriage license, go before a judge and get married. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a marriage-like relationship. You don't even have to be married and you can have a marriage-like relationship. So some of the things that we need to prove when you're doing a spousal sponsorship are things like you're living together, you're sharing your finances, children are a good indication, your views of your family members and close friends, you're declaring what it is, for your taxes and to your employer, maybe they're on your benefits plan, what your future intentions are. Normally, when we are applying for a spousal sponsorship, our stack of documents are very, very thick. Because we want to show in a genuine relationship all of the different various documents that prove that you have a marriage-like relationship, not just a marriage certificate. Okay. All right. So one of the things, when you come to an immigration lawyer that we have to decide is whether or not, if you're going to file a spousal sponsorship, whether or not we are going to apply inside of Canada or if we're going to apply outside of Canada. Those are two very different kinds of systems. Okay. And there are a few considerations. One is the right to appeal. If you apply inside Canada, you will not, if your application is rejected, you will not have an opportunity to present new evidence and go before a judge or a tribunal member in the Immigration Appeal Division and testify there. If you apply outside of Canada, you would. Okay. If you're inside Canada, you can apply for a work permit. Now, there is a current procedure where if you apply outside of Canada, and then you later come and apply for a visa to come into Canada, and your spouse comes into Canada, then they can also apply for a work permit as well. Okay. Timing, sometimes it depends. I mean, it does vary. Sometimes at different places. Sometimes it's faster inside Canada. Sometimes it's faster outside of Canada. And then inside Canada, if you apply inside Canada, it's one of the only ways in which oftentimes if you don't have status inside Canada, you can file the spousal sponsorship and it overcomes the status issue. That being said, if your spouse doesn't have status, you're sponsoring them, they may not know before you file your application that your spouse is without status. But once you file your application, they'll know that your spouse is in Canada and that they can then find your spouse as well. So sometimes it's a balance and of applying and making sure that, it's a good application. It's not going to be rejected, because if it is going to be rejected, then you would be jeopardizing being known inside the country that you are without status as well. All right, so what are some of the next steps? First of all, it's very important for you both to understand your pathway together, okay? We don't want to just work with one person on the application. It's one person's application to gain status, and it's the other partner's application because they're sponsoring, they're responsible for it. So it's something that we have to represent both people. And for the most part, both people are usually aligned and you want to have the same goals. So as a lawyer, we can represent both people. But sometimes that might come into a conflict. If your relationship breaks down before you get permanent residence, then the application is moot. It's going to be denied. And, sometimes there could be situations where one partner wants to stay in the relationship and one partner wants to go, or both partners want to go, but one person has status. Oftentimes in those kind of situations, then as a lawyer, I would have to withdraw because there's a conflict of interest. Okay. But if you want to apply, it's definitely important for both people to be there on the call with the lawyer, so that we can actually advise both of you on what the consequences are. Make sure you start keeping proper records of your relationship. You know, at the 1 year mark, you can qualify for a common law status. But if you wait until the 1 year mark to sometimes start collecting your documents, oftentimes you may not have the documents that you need, right? So the minute that you start living together, you can start collecting things like your lease, benefits, bank statements together, right? All these kinds of other documents that you would want to show that you have that marriage-like relationship together. Hire a good immigration lawyer, and you have to hire someone who understands this area of law. And like I said, you should prepare early, and you should hire someone early so that you know what to prepare. Okay? And the earlier you submit the application, the earlier you'll get a result. But you also need to make sure that you have all of the evidence that you need in order to satisfy the officer so that they won't reject your application and also that they won't call you in for an interview. Okay? If they call you in for an interview, normally it's because they have doubts about your relationship. And, I can count on one hand over the last 20 years that I've had a interview for anyone, because normally our applications are very, very fulsome. But sometimes, especially if you don't have status in Canada or the relationship is very, very fast and isn't necessarily normally what the officer would expect a marriage-like situation to be, they might call you in for an interview. And in those situations, it's very important that your lawyer prepares you properly and also attends the interview as well. All right, so here is our information. If you would like to book a consultation, please let us know, and please let us know that you are coming from a Devant webinar, because we always give Devant webinar attendees a discount. Our discounted consultation fee is $100 plus tax, and we'll have a call on video conference, and we'll just go over what the plan is for you and your family. All right, so that's what I have for the presentation today.
Wow,
Let's
that
go over
was,
some questions.
yes, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for, your informative session as always. Personally, I didn't ever think about the documents as so important and crucial, but documenting relationships to support spousal applications, definitely something that stood out for me today, as well as sort of the whole process. So thank you so much. We have a number of questions. Just a reminder to everyone, please put your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. I really want to encourage all of you to do that. I'm also just going to launch our poll as I go through the session. We've got a lot of people here on the call right now. Thank you so much for joining. So this session was about spousal permits, but I see, Elizabeth, there are a lot of other questions here. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to prioritize the spousal questions first, and then based on timing, we'll go to the other questions. So I'm going to try to get through as many as we can today. Please take a moment to rate the session as well as to provide your feedback. This session will be provided on recording for anyone who has joined today. So the first question I'm going to focus on is from someone who says, I want to include my under 22-year-old son and my husband to my PR application. Is there any score calculator I use to know my family total score?
It depends on the type of application that you want to apply for. Normally, children don't add or take away any scores like, for express entry or provincial nominee program. As long as you submit the application before their 22nd birthday, you lock in their date. But it's very important to distinguish between submitting your application and putting yourself into the pool. When you put yourself into the pool, you have not submitted any application. So the clock is still running. It's only after you receive the invitation to apply, um, or expression of interest or whatnot, where you can actually apply for your provincial nominee program or apply for the permanent residence, that you can actually then submit your application. And the provincial nominee program, as soon as you submit the application for the provincial nominee program as well, that also locks in the age for the child.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. I have another question here from someone that says, I'm a student in Canada. When applying for my child who is a minor study permit, should I use my GC key account or create a new one for my child?
Your GC key account, if it's for your own application, you can do it for yourself. I don't usually use that because I am a representative, so I have my representative portal where I just submit all of my clients in there. I'm not exactly sure, but you may have to create one if just for your child, if it's just for them, but I wouldn't be able to answer that because I don't use GC keys.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. I would also maybe recommend that you check on the IRCC website, and there is a phone number that you can call to clarify and to speak with IRCC as well.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so
We
I
have a lot of
appreciate,
people who want
yeah,
to
there's a
just
lot of
go over the
questions.
economic streams. Yeah.
Yes, so there's a lot of questions here. So I see everyone's asking a lot about post-grad work permit. There's quite a few questions here. I'm just trying to see if there's anyone else that has a spousal or family question. Just give me 10 more seconds so I don't miss anyone. Okay, so
There's some one in the end here.
mhm.
He's at the very end.
Okay, let's go
This person in the
to,
study permit married the husband in, you see that one at the very end?
okay. 1 second. Okay, yes, I see that. So thank you. So a question is, can my husband apply for the extension of the SOWP if my postgrad work permit is not yet approved? Also, can I use my part-time job under NOC to apply for the family?
Oh, I see. So this one is, it's not a spousal one, but this one is with regard to the spousal open work permit if the postgrad work permit is not yet approved. So oftentimes, so on the website they say, the spousal work permit has to be according to the postgrad work permit, right? Oftentimes we just apply for both of them together because if the officer approves the postgrad work permit, then they should approve the spousal work permit. Um, you have to apply for the extension of your spousal work permit before the spouse's work permit expires. The spouse's work permit may not expire the same time that your study permit expires because your student status would be gone 90 days after you finish your studies. But if their work permit is beyond that, their work permit is good until it's good for. So you can apply for the spousal work permit after you submit the postgrad work permit, even if you don't have it yet, but indicate that you had applied for it. Part-time, it's not necessarily stated that the work has to be full-time. You can use part-time, except you do need to show that you will have enough finances to support your family for that. I think it's the next question by Arshdeep
Okay.
or
Yes,
someone who,
Arshdeep, yep.
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
Arshdeep's question is, I'm on a study permit right now. I married my husband in 2024, and we dated for a year or two before that. We are trying to apply for my PR. He is a sponsor. He is born in Canada. My question is that for the PR form, they ask if I know my wife relatives' information. My relatives do not know about my marriage, but my husband's side of the family knows about our marriage and support it. So my question is, do I need to fill in the relative section or not? I'm worried that they may hurt me if IRCC calls them.
Mm, very interesting here. Well, you know what? In this kind of situation, do come and talk to us about that. Um, you have to explain it very carefully as to why it is that your relatives don't know about this. Like this is a very complicated situation. We'll have to explain it very carefully about the whole dynamic, about your relationship, about the dynamic with your relatives. Normally they don't call, but that's not to say that they couldn't call. Sometimes they do call. So whatever it is, we can deal with it. But this is not something that I can just answer in a few minutes.
Okay,
Normally, if you hire us,
for
we
sure.
will have to, write submissions, explain your situation. Um, Usually, the support of your family, it's important indication of the genuineness of your relationship. That being said, just because your family doesn't support it doesn't mean that your relationship is not genuine. But
Mm-hmm.
in those kind of situations, you certainly have to explain it very carefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a sensitive one. Thank you so much for this question, Arshdeep. Again, highly encourage you to reach out to Elizabeth. This will take a definitely consultation for you, and best of luck to you in your situation. We also have another question here from an anonymous student. I'm a student. I have been separated from my husband for 3 years. My child is still not in Canada. The father is also not in Canada. On the child's minor study permit application, can I sign as the mother and just attach a letter from the father, or should both parents sign?
On the study permit for your child, you can sign, on behalf of your child. But normally, if the father is not in Canada, normally you would have to show that the father is still supportive and it consents to the child being in Canada without him as well. So that's something that we normally would need to see
Okay.
with regard to that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's one of those situations when we would have to have a consult with you.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. And just a reminder, I'm just focusing on the family spousal as much as possible, and I will go through the other questions as well, based on our timing. Okay, everyone? So another question here is, can I extend my spouse's work permit if I got any tier 2 or tier 3 jobs?
It really depends on your occupation. Because right now, for the open spousal work permits, based on the work permit of the principal applicant, it's no longer that you can get a spousal work permit for any job. For the tier 2 and 3, you have to have an occupation that is on the list. That being said, if you have already applied for permanent residence, applied, not put your name in the pool, but applied for permanent residence, then you may be able to get an open spousal work permit for your spouse.
Just give me 1 second. Sorry, this is a very popular session with lots of questions. Um, Just trying to see if there's anyone else. Okay, here's another spousal. Hi, good evening. I'm completing a 2-year study program at Fanshawe, 1 year plus 1 year, and will apply for my postgrad work permit in September of 2025. My spouse, who is in India, applied for a spousal open work permit in February of 2024, but was rejected due to the rule changes in June of 2024. He has not yet reapplied since then due to further policy changes. Given my situation, what is the best way to bring my spouse to Canada after I get my postgrad work permit? And what are the eligibility requirements for a spousal open work permit now?
So I think we covered that. It was the last session or the session
Mhm.
before. But right now, with the rule changes, the spousal work permits are only issued when you graduate to those people who have a job offer of certain tiers. So, and it's also a 16-month work permit as well. For if it's O or 1, tier 0 or 1, then you're okay. Any tier 0 or 1, it's okay, but it's a 16-month work permit at least. If it's tier 2 or 3, then it has to be on that list that they're listing on the website of occupations. 4 or 5, you don't have any abilities to get the spousal work permit. Or if you have submitted your permanent residence application under one of the economic categories, then you can also apply for a spousal work permit as well.
Great. Thank you so much. And I do want to encourage you to reach out to Elizabeth. Her contact information is here for a consultation, and just let her know that you were here at this session. We have another question around spousal and family applications. Someone is saying that I currently am a student at Conestoga College. I'm also studying for my PSW at CLI College in a hybrid. CLI College gave me 2 letters to invite for my graduation. Can I use this letter to invite my husband to Canada?
So you can always have reasons for family members to come to Canada. Okay. Yeah, I want my family to visit me. I want my family to be with me. I want my family to come to my graduation. As to whether or not the visitor visas will be issued, that's a matter of the entire application as a whole, whether or not the officer believes that the person is coming for this reason, whether or not they will leave Canada when they're supposed to, what their ties are, whether or not there had been previous rejections, whether or not the officer is in good mood. It all really depends on the application. But certainly, if that's a reason for your spouse to come and visit you, you could certainly present it as a reason.
Okay. This is another really good question. Thank you for that answer, Elizabeth. I would like to know how much financial need or money my husband as a sponsor would need to show when applying for PR. Right now, he is a TA and applying for his master's.
So that's a very good question. For spousal sponsorships, there is no minimum income that you have to show for a sponsor. Okay. You do have to show that you're not on social assistance as a sponsor, and that you will be able to have financial means for your family to support yourselves, um, and you're not going to be on social assistance after. But there is no set minimum income that you have to meet as a sponsor.
Thank you. That's a really, really good question. I am going to go now to the beginning of our list because we have quite a few questions. I think we got all of those. Oh, I've got one more here. Sorry, one more. Someone is saying, I'm on a maternity leave from my job, but doing study, and by the end of April, my study will be completed. I have to apply for my postgrad work permit after the completion of my study. I also have to extend it to my husband and my daughter's visa. Should I need a tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 job while extending my husband and daughter's visa?
So visa is very different from status in Canada. A visa is something that is on your passport that allows you to travel to Canada. It doesn't actually give you status. If you're talking about your husband's work permit, that will depend, like I said, on your job offer, tier 0 or 1, or 2, 3, etc. If you would just want to apply for the extension of visitor status, you can apply as long as you can show that you have the financial means to support your family while they're accompanying you as visitors, and that they can when they are not allowed to work. How are you going to support yourselves in Canada?
Mm-hmm. Okay, very, very important information. I have someone who I think just joined, but they have a spousal question, so I'm going to ask it. It says, my spouse's OPW will be expired in September 30th. I may graduate and submit my postgrad work permit in May. Should I apply for the SOPW at the same time when I apply for my postgrad work permit?
Yeah, I mean, the website keeps saying that you have to apply for spousal work permit, based on the post-grad work permit of your spouse. And so, but it doesn't make sense that you would submit a spousal work permit after you submit the post-grad work permit. Normally, we have been submitting both at the same time. We haven't yet gotten any applications back because the application was just a couple months ago, and it takes 4 or 5 months to submit. But in the past, I've never had any issues where I've submitted both of them together.
Okay, that's good to know. Just want to encourage you again, if you have specific personal questions on your circumstance, that are not generic, sort of spousal, family, or other, please follow up with Elizabeth. Her confirmation of her information is on the slide here. You do get a discount in your first consultation with Elizabeth as well. I have another spousal question here. Someone just needs clarification regarding the new policy in applying for postgrad work permit SOWP. If the work permit if the work of the postgrad work permit applicant is a financial advisor, which means tier one, but with a commission-based income, is it possible to extend the SOWP?
There is no set income level they have to meet to technically qualify for the spousal work permit. In general, though, I would have to say that you should try to show that you would have enough income to support the family, uh, if you were to have your spouse accompany you as well.
I'm just responding to someone who asked a question that you already answered. Um, just trying to go through this. Okay, so a question here. Can my husband apply for the extension of his SOWP if my postgraduate work permit is not yet approved?
I
Also,
think
can I
I answered.
you did answer that? Okay.
Yeah, I think I answered this one.
Okay, you said you can apply for it at the same time.
Yeah.
And also someone said, can I use my part-time job under NOC to apply for the family?
Yeah, I think I answered that one.
Did that one? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, great. You will be getting a recording of this video as well. So if you missed that, you will get access to the recording. So I'm going to go to the front of the questions.
Mhm.
So the very first question, I know the person has been following up with me. I know it's very important to them to try to get some direction here. So there is someone here who's asking, they're changing their program and now they're doing a 6-month program as a PSW in hopes to get a job as a PSW, but they only have a year and a half left on their postgrad work permit.
Mhm.
Are they on the right track to get a career in the PSW, or should they abandon it and go for their French again? So I think this is a career related question, not really an immigration related question, as far as I can see. It's about the
Yeah, I
career.
mean, the thing is, it's more of a caregiver program. So the caregiver program was announced. It's going to start. It's going to the program will open on Monday of next week, and essentially, there's only a very few spots available for the caregiver. 2,400, I think 50 or 203, 2350, something like that per
Okay.
category.
Okay.
There's the children, caregiving of children is one, and then the other one is disabled and elderly. And so PSW, one of the requirements is 6 months for PSW training, or if you have work experience for 6 months. So whether or not the program will still be open by the time you finish your program, probably not. We're expecting the programs to fill up pretty fast. Um, it's supposed to open again next year. Who knows if that's going to happen for sure. Who knows who's going to be in power? Who knows what's going to happen next year for the caregiver program? Um, in general, I would say though that healthcare, personal support workers, nurses aid, it's definitely a occupation in demand. And I think if you're looking at careers, that is something where it's recognized shortage in Canada. There are different programs, for example, provincial nominee programs, OIMP, other provincial nominee programs, which recognize, that there's a need. And if you work in there, very commonly it's selected. Um, it's possible to get LMIAs for many places because it's a recognized shortage and they really need you. So healthcare in general, PSW in general, it is a pretty good occupation to do. There's no guarantees these days in immigration. We can certainly come for consultation and we can certainly look at the various options that you have. These days, it's you have to think, can I get permanent residence? You also have to think, can I get an extension of my status as well? Because, we have 2.3 million people in the country, and there's less than 200,000 spots for economic. Family sponsorships, there is that. That's why we say, if you have a partner, family sponsorship may be the way to go, right? Spousal sponsorship may be the way to go. But if you don't, and you're looking at economic sponsorship, economic applications, are you the 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 people who can get through? Maybe, maybe not. If you can't get through, it's very important that you look at ways for you to extend your status, because as time goes by and as the number of temporary workers shrink, then the ratio of people who can get permanent residence through the economic streams will go up. So sometimes it's those people who can actually extend their status and last over the next couple of years that who then are able to eventually apply for permanent residence.
Wow. Yeah, that's really good information, Elizabeth. Thank you for taking the time to go through the healthcare and the caregiver announcements. I know you and I talked about that, and maybe I do see some questions around PSW caregiver. Maybe we can have that as a follow-up for those of you who have follow-up questions, because I know I won't be able to get to all of the questions in the queue, but I think that there's a lot of questions around that as well that are starting to pop up. So we can maybe talk about that at our next session, but you can also follow up with Elizabeth. I do encourage you to contact Elizabeth directly. So I'm just
Yeah,
going to,
I'm just thinking, maybe we can do for the next session, we can look at specialized occupations and
okay.
jobs. Maybe we can do something like that and look at, the different kinds of occupations in
Mm-hmm.
demand or the priority occupations that different governments for different uh programs are looking
Mm-hmm.
at. I wonder if that might be of interest to you guys.
That sounds really good, because I think people want to understand the academic area of study and how is it going to help them get PR or help them to, as you said, extend their status long enough for them to get a job and to get PR. So I think that would be a really good suggestion.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that suggestion.
Okay.
So we're at 7:47. I'm gonna keep on going because I can see that the questions keep piling up. We're almost at 50 questions. Also, I won't be able to get to all your questions. It looks like there's a lot of need here. I do encourage you to reach out to Elizabeth directly. You have her information here. So I have a question here from someone going right from the top of the list. Will IRCC's latest clarification on postgrad work permit eligibility also apply to study permit extensions after November 1st, or will it only apply to study permit applications before November 1st?
Sure, what the latest clarifications of postgrad work permit. So basically, for the field of study, it only applicable for those who submitted the application after November 1st. But if you have your first program and you have your study permit for that, that's great. But if you submitted your study permit for your second program before November 1st, then that's okay. That is not subject to the field of study. But if you submitted the study permit after November 1st for your second program, then that would be subject to the field of study.
Thank you. Someone also says that I applied for a program in the same DLI and got the offer. Can I still use this study permit and the accompanying work permit for the new program?
Program change and got the offer. Can I still use a study permit and company for the new program? So if you have a study permit and it's in the same DLI, you can use it for that. You still use the same study permit. Whether or not that program, it'd be interesting whether or not that program will qualify for the post-grad work permit or not if you got accepted to that program after November 1st. Probably not. You should play it safe, and for that second program, make sure that it also qualifies for the field of study
Okay.
for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. So moving on, I have a question here. I applied for my postgrad work permit back in September 24, but still awaiting the decision. Why is it taking so much time, even the date given by IRCC has passed?
Mm. It's difficult. There's a lot of applications that go way beyond what is there. Sometimes we see, and you can do a tip and see if there's something going on with your applications. Oftentimes we see applications are held up because of security concerns. And those are some things that the CSIS themselves deals with. It may not be yourself. It may be the country where you're a national of, that it's just taking them a very long time. For example, China, Iran, those are notorious for taking a long time for security checks. Sometimes your name or it might be very similar to someone on their watch list, and that's taking some time.
Okay.
Sometimes your application may have some complexities that the officer who's looking at it first doesn't know what to do with, and they are transferring to a senior officer. Sometimes it's just the fact that your file landed in an officer who's taking his time, or maybe they're no longer on the job and the application is just shuffled to the side. But you know, it's very difficult for us to deal with these situations. We try to be a squeaky wheel. We try to, submit web forms, etc. You can ask your member of parliament to see if they can do something about it. Although right now it's election time, they may not have that much time to deal with that right now before the election. Or else, if an application, this is not enough time, like, just a few months, but if an application goes way over, like over a year, then we may look at federal court mandamus applications as well.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I'm sure there's a lot of people on the call who are thinking about this and appreciate that question. A question around documents. Which documents do we need to provide to IRCC as our foreign experience proof when applying for PR?
That one, it depends on your situation. You always need to provide a well-drafted letter outlining the elements of your work. Sometimes depending on the application, we send in other forms, like your other forms of proof, like your pay stubs, your tax documents, your employment contract, etc.
Okay. Quick question. How many hours can we work along with co-op?
How many hours can you work on your co-op work permit? There is no set number of hours for your co-op work permit.
And how about after they complete their co-op, until they get completion letter from co-op?
Well, the co-op work permit only allows you to work according to the co-op program. It doesn't allow you to work for anything else. All the other things are dependent on, for example, if you have a study permit, or sometimes you have open work permits other than that. But let's just say you only have your study permit, then you're allowed to work part-time, 24 hours while you're in studies, and full-time on scheduled breaks.
Thank you so much. Um, just looking, can we ask the province to send us an invitation for PR?
Oh, if it was only so easy to ask the province to do so. We do these programs. I think we've done a few. You can go back and take a look. There are different kinds of applications, provincial nominee programs, etc., that you may qualify for, where you can get a provincial nomination, and then you can get permanent residence. But you have to qualify for those.
Okay, great. So I see we're now at 7:54. There's still quite a few questions. I just released a poll around how did you hear about this session, but I think at this point we're going to wrap up. I know there's still a lot of questions here. I will save the questions so that we have it for future reference. Thank you guys so much for joining. Maybe we can go. Do we have any other slides, Elizabeth, to share? Great. So just a reminder, thank you guys so much for joining our session today. Our follow-up events will be next week. We're going to have Ask a Recruiter event. We have a April 9th workshop, Build Your Network. April 16th, we're going to have a career coach Q&A. And then our next immigration session with Elizabeth will be on April the 23rd. So with that being said, I will review the questions to look for themes, and we are going to consider, as you said, Elizabeth, specialized occupations and jobs in demand and their pathways. Thank you guys so much. Please give a big round of applause for Elizabeth. I know, Elizabeth, you had a full day and you offer your time to us all to share updates and answer as many questions as you can at no cost. Again, please reach out. Seeing lots of claps here again. Thank you so much. So please follow Elizabeth. You will be added to her newsletter to get updated information. And she will be back again on April the 23rd. So on behalf of everyone here today, Elizabeth, thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for joining us. We're always looking forward to chatting with you and getting your information and your advice. And thank you for being patient. I know you've answered some of these questions in past webinars. The webinars will be available to those who have registered and attended. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. My name is Sisha Maharaj, Senior Consultant with Devant. I look forward to seeing you at future events. Best of luck to you. And just remember that Devant is here to support you in being successful as an alumni and as a student and newcomer. And we are here hosting these events for free. And we're also offering free career events, hiring events twice a year. And we have an upcoming class of 2025 event that will be held in the spring to help you connect with employers. So best of luck to you all. We look forward to chatting with you and see you again next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye, Elizabeth.